So in this topic we are going to cover the complex functions, nested functions, complex functions including lambdas, multiple lambdas, passing the arg variables, args, passing the functions as tuples and undefined length, holding dictionaries and tuples. So basic all kinds of nested things. So in last topic we had seen the lambda functions or some basic functions like define, and here we are going to see how to use nested functions and more advanced functions using define and lambda. So first, first let's define a dictionary, sorry, a list, or you can define a list like this also. So what is L1 now? 2 3 5 6, or L1 is equal to range 2 to 6. So in all the cases L1 is going to hold the same starting values and the ending values, like we had seen one. Let me show it once again. Range 2 to 6 and with an interval of 1. So same effect of all of the kind of usage of this range. Now what if we wanted to get only those elements included in this list who are multiple of 2's? So let's create a list x for x in range, let's take for example 10, from 0 to 10. Now we can add some more functionality here where x percentile 2 is equal to 0. Basically, if you have worked in some other programming languages, this means that you divide an integer value or whatever value by 2, and if the resultant, like if the remainder is 0, like you divide 4 by 2, what is the remainder? 0. So that value is, so that integer or that numerical value is completely divided by 2. That means it's multiple of 2. If you make it percentile 3, that means it is a multiple of 3. Okay, sorry, not where, it has to be if. So we got all the elements in the list which are multiples of 2. Same way you can create a list which are multiple of 3. Okay, you can do it in a simple define function also. Define f. Now should we pass a list to it or not? Let's pass it range of, no, this won't define anything. Let's pass it a list. We'll define the list afterwards. What are the contents of the list? Now let's define a empty list, which will be result is equal to empty list for elements. I'm using a short form el instead of elements. El in L1 if el percentile 2 is equal to 0, then append el into this empty list that we have just defined here. So basically this loop iterates every time, and every time it finds this condition suitable, it finds this condition matching. If that element of L1, suppose L1 is having element number 2, first element, that is 2, so 2 is passed to EL. Now it checks with the condition, if 2 is multiple of 2, it is the condition satisfied, so it will append in this result kind of list that element. So basically 2, where it is, 2 gets appended to this empty list. So every time this loop iterates, the elements which are meeting this condition, they are appended to res called list. Now this function doesn't make any sense if you don't return the what result of this function. So let's define L1 now, range up to 10. What is L1? 0 to 9. Now let's pass it to this function. Okay, so pretty good. All of the items which are not multiple of 2, they are filtered out. They are not taken basically into this, they don't pass through this condition matching, and they don't get appended to this list. So these are some function defining methods to filter out some of your inputs. Now you can also define a lambda function. Instead of defining this much long code, then passing it some values and finding out the value, what was the result, you can define it in some lambda functions which will require 1 or 2 more functions. So one of the functions that Python provides is filter. Filter takes a function or a condition matching statement which matches a condition if it is true out of the sequence or out of the elements of a list or whatever tuple. If it is true, then it appends it to a list and it gives you a list in the output. Okay, so so how should we start? Fine, let's define a function lambda. As we had seen lambda in previous examples, x percentile 2 is equal to 0. Just remember this lambda function. If you don't remember it, go through the previous videos, and we'll pass it a list, a sequence, and it gives out all of the elements which are multiple of 2. So basically this much big code we are replacing with a single lambda function, with single filter and lambda function. This thing we can further nest, and the traditional function which we are generating, like finding out the square of some lists elements, we can define it in that kind of function also. So we'll use map function. What map takes is, map takes a function, then a sequence. Since this whole sequence, or what do you call, this assignment is producing a sequence, a list 0 to 8, which are having the multiple of 2 elements. This we can take as a sequence, and we'll provide it a function, and we'll give it a sequence. Sequence will be basically the output of this function. So you can either assign it to some variable, so that we can straight away define some variable over here, we can replace it with this, or we can create it from scratch. So let's define a function, again a lambda function, lambda x. We find out the square of that value passed to lambda function, and now we need to provide a sequence. Now you can straight away copy and paste, or you can straight away copy this function over here. Just take care of braces, lambda x percentile 2 is equal to 0, and now the main thing, you have to provide a list so that this filter function could work. So basically you need to provide the filter function a condition matching statement and a list containing some iterable items, close all the parentheses. Okay, so it gives the squared values of all the elements of this list, which we had found out here, which we had found out that they are the multiple of 2. So basically, the more you practice these functions, the more these are going to get in your brain. Okay, now the next topic will be what map function we have covered. Recursive function we had covered. Now for practice purpose, let's make a factorial function. Factorial means, like, if you pass it a value 4, it should multiply it with 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So basically, if we are trying to find out the factorial of 4, it should give you 24. Okay, so we'll create a very basic function. You pass it some variable n when you're going to call this function object. Now we are going to define a result variable which will be 1. You don't define it as 0 because every time it's going to be multiplied with itself. Now every time you find out the factorial, you're going to reduce it, you're going to subtract it from the previous value, you're going to subtract 1, so that you get the next element, then next element, and then the next. Now you have to do this until you reach the value of that variable equal to 1. So basically, you have to keep the value of that variable above 1 only. So define a condition over here while n is greater than 1. Now let's think over it. We will get a variable which will hold the value of n into n multiplied by n minus 1. Okay, so every time it will multiply 4 into 3. Now once 4 into 3 is already multiplied, you need not multiply 3 again with it, otherwise it will keep on remultiplicating itself. So you have to reduce n by 2 so that it goes, because the result of these multiplication is going to be stored in f. Okay, next time when you use n, you have to reduce it by 2 so that now 2 comes into picture, and you multiply 2 with 1 and store it in the same variable and multiply it by itself. So now we are going to pass the value of result to f multiplied by result only, so that now result holds the resultant value. Okay, now as we decided, reduce n by 2. Now this function is going to run, this loop is going to run till the time n does not reach the value 1. Once it reaches the value, result is continuously getting multiplied by f, where f is a multiplication of two consecutive values, and now result gets multiplied by f every time. So basically 4 into 3, 12 gets stored here. Next time when you multiply 2 with 1, 2 is multiplied by 12. So basically result is every time holding the value of factorials, mini factorials basically. Now you need to return result. Okay, now you run this function. What do you want? 5. Oh no, I guess it's gone in infinity loop. Let's go through it once more. No, it's gone to infinity loop. No, what did I do? uh it was supposed to be replaced by is equal to this bloody keyboard. This keyboard kind of thing always bugs me too much. So we get the output as 120. The factorial of 5 is always 120. Factorial of 4 is 24. Factorial of 6 is 720. Basically 120 multiplied by 6 will be factorial 6. Okay, now there's another method of finding out the factorial. Means basically what I'm getting in my head is, once you are supplied with a variable or with some value, you create a list out of it. Suppose you are provided value 5. Now you want to find out the factorial of 5. Now if you are able to create a list which holds the decrementing values, the decrementing numbers of 5, so what can you do is, every time you can pick up one number, multiply it with next number, pop it out, the resultant multiply with second next number, pop it out, so by this time all the values are popped out. Now multiply the result with another number, pop this also out. So basically these all values are popped out at this till this time, and multiply it with this one. So you'll have to provide one condition of this kind again, so that it doesn't go down. Multiply it with 0, then with -1, then otherwise it will just going to go into a infinity loop. Okay, so how do you go about it? Define factorial n. Now first of all we need to create a list out of it. Basically this is not a standard method of finding out the factorial, but just for the practice purpose sake I'm making it. Actually I didn't make it till now, so I'll have to use my brain how to make it. We'll create a empty list, and now we'll append with n-1, and this will be kept in a loop while n is greater than 1, indented by one tab. So till the time n remains greater than 1, this loop continues. So every time result is appended by its lower value, but this n-1, it finishes here only. Basically n does not get replaced by n-1, so you need to reduce n by 1. Okay, so now let's return result. Let's see what happens. Factorial of 4, yeah, pretty good. Okay, so basically what it is doing, it's removing 4 out of it. No problem. Let's create an empty list which contains the initial number. Now find out the factorial of 5. Okay, so now this function creates a list which contains all of the elements right from 5 to down below, decrementing it by 1. So basically let's call this function as create list. Correct. Now basically it's growing and growing, and this function is growing just, but you should see all these things so that these things get more and more clear in your brain. Now what should we do? We should pick up one value, keep this first value in some kind of temporary result, pop it out. Now multiply that result with this value, keep it in the same variable result, pop this value also out, and consecutively every time do it with each and every element. So define find factorial. This will be L1. Let's provide it a list L1. Now again result is equal to 1. Don't assign it, don't initialize it with 0, because if you initialize it with 0 everything goes to 0. Now we should multiply result. No, result is equal to result multiplied by L1 0, basically first element. You can make it this loop, you can avoid also. Basically I'll show it in next video. Sorry, not next video, next method. Let's go through the basic functions now. No, not L0. Let's pop first item from here, and whatever item is popped out, that item basically 5 is popped out at the first sequence. 5 will be multiplied with result, basically with 1. Okay, now we should include it in a while loop. While length of L1 is greater than 0, till the time this list doesn't get empty, it should continue repeating this loop. So till the time it doesn't get 0, it will keep on multiplying with the next value and keep on popping it out. So basically, for better clarity, we should give a print function also, popping out what? L1 dot pop 0. Okay, now return result over here once the loop is finished. Let's hope everything runs fine. So now what is L1? No, basically this will give you a result list. For simplicity purpose, no, let's provide it list by ourselves only. Now find factorial of list L1. So what does it give back? Okay, let's print it in the next line, because I guess there's some problem it's facing with print function. No, the same problem. Print, yeah, okay. So what's wrong with this? popping out. Okay, let's pop out the first element. Yeah, it popped out. What's the problem? Okay, the braces. Now so you see, these are the small mistakes almost everybody makes. Now again call the function where it is gone. Find factorial. No, sorry, again I'm making the same mistake. What I'm making here is this one. Sometimes I don't pay attention to genuine things. Okay. Okay. Now at least we achieved something. What's happening here is, no, I was wrong there. Basically, what's happening? We are done somewhere. Pop from empty list. 5 3 1. Okay, let's troubleshoot more. Find factorial of L1, result 1. Okay, I got it now. Let me try out something. Here. Okay, so what was happening is that every time we used to run this print, it was actually popping out the value of the first element, and next time it will pop out the next element, and it won't be able to use that value into multiplication function, because basically we are already popping it out. So better not to use it. We can use it if we assign this value to some other function over here, and then we just print out the value somewhere here, not using pop function. So basically it will pop everything one by one and won't allow it to be used in the multiplication function. Find factorial of, what is L1 basically right now? I don't know. L1 is gone again. Okay, so find fact of L1. Okay, so it's giving us the factorial value. Let's write this function again and comment this section also. Okay, so we are running a factorial function over a list now. And from where did we get this list? From here. Okay, from here. Okay, let's keep both of the functions in front of us only. So now we need to add both of these functions. Not add, basically we have to join these both functions for functionality. Now how do we join? So just pay attention. Here's the value we want our factorial to be created for, and when we call this function, it provides us a list, a populated list. So this whole thing you can replace here. Basically you can call this function here, and when this function runs, it should call this function here, create list n, and it will return you the result kind of list. Result will be replaced with this one, res, basically res, and then that res will be used throughout this function here. So let's give it a try. So what should we do? Find fact, use this function here. It should work. Basically I never tried it before, trying first time here. Yeah, great. So it runs perfect. Now you can run it for any other value, whatever you want. It gives you the list, sorry, the result of the factorial, whatever factorial you want here. So a function can again call a function, and inside here also you can again call a function, correct? So if you want to replace it, basically what you need, create a list. You can create a list with this also. No, that will give you a list from starting from 0 to 4 or 0 to 5. Basically you have to sort it in the reverse order. That will become too much nested as of now. Okay, so this is the way you can create functions inside of functions within one line. You can call, no, it's not defining a function within a function in one line, but it's basically you can call a function and again call a function in itself. Okay, so what we have covered till now is factorial. We filtered out lambdas. Okay, let's take another example of this. Let's take a list starting from 0 to 9. What is L1? L1 is a list starting from 0 going up to 9. Now what you wanted one function, square function, to be run through the elements of this list on those elements who are multiple of 2. Now what if you needed another condition? Where you want that you should get the square of those elements which are multiple of 2, and they should be greater than 3 and lesser than 9. But in this selection also you want square of 4, square of 6 and square of 8. Basically square of all those values who are below 9 and above 3, but still they are multiple of 2. So we can extend this function further. Basically this is an iterator. What we had replaced here, basically this was supposed to be list L1, and each and every element of this list we would pass on to this function, this lambda function, one by one, and lambda will produce you the resulting list which will contain the square of all of the elements. But this iterable list we are replacing with this function filter, which will filter in only those elements which are 2's multiple. Now again we can replace this sequence or this iterable list with another function, another filter, which this, you see, filter function, a conditional matching function and a sequence. So it's again asking us one more function, condition matching expression, which is going to be lambda, again x, and x is greater than 3 and lesser than 9, and this lambda we are supposed to cover in braces. here. Now lambda here, lambda finishes here. You need to provide another sequence, another expression for this filter, that has to be L1. Okay, now let's count the braces. Okay, complete now, perfect. So L1 is from 0 to 9. Where's the phone? Okay, so basically that phone call distracted me. Now I forgot where I was. So where we were. So basically here we have got the results of square of the elements which are multiple of 2 and which fall from 4 to 9. Yes. Now some more addition to functions. You can even pass functions as arguments as objects or arguments. Suppose you got a function, define printing. What should we do? Echo. Args. Simply print it. Okay, so we call function, it simply prints out whatever we pass on to it. Now suppose okay, let's define another function, echo added, same args. Now print args plus we should make out something for identification, plus added, something like this, so that we can make out whether this function is, whether which function we are calling. We are calling the original echo function, or if we are calling the added function, what it is doing. Now let's create another function which will basically call either echo or it will call echo added. Okay, so let's make it okay action. We can call here either this function. So now you can pass in any function. Basically you need not mention here, you can just simply give it a function. Better call it function 1 so that it doesn't clash. Anyway, it's not going to clash, but make it a good habit. Function 1 and args. Now simply call that function here and pass those arguments. Basically what we are doing here, we are passing one function as an argument and we are passing some arguments also, and we are calling this function. Basically this, any of these functions will be called now, whichever you provide, either you provide echo or you provide echo added, and same args will be passed on to that function. Okay, so now let's call it. Now you choose which function you want to call. I'll call echo, and as arguments I'll provide past initial plus. So since I called only echo, so whatever arguments I'm passing here, they are simply printed on screen, past initial. Now what if I want to have a choice? If I want to, where it is, if I want to print on the screen something, but I want to print this one. I want to add this string also along with my arguments, along with my string whatever I pass. So let me pass this function. Let me provide this function to this call, and now I'll provide the same string again to this function. Now see what happened. Now we had a choice, either we pass this function or we pass this function. Whichever function you provide, whichever function you pass with arguments, that function only will be called through this function. Okay, so basically this shows that functions also can be passed as arguments. So now let's go on to what? Wait, let me see. I had another example waiting. Okay, finding out the max and min from a list. So should we make it into one function or two? Let's extend this topic only. So we should create two functions basically, which will evaluate, either we want to find out the biggest number in the list or we want to find out the smallest number in the list. Okay, so accordingly we make it. Let's define a function find number. Now it's up to you which function we pass it. Basically we have defined a plain function find number, greater or smaller, that's our choice, and we pass it a list. Now we will call that function and I'm breaking my rules only. Okay, call that function and pass it the arguments. No, not like this. Let's define the full functionality here. Okay, we got one list with this passed as argument. So basically we should call, okay, let's wait, let me define two functions initially. Let's pass it two variables, and basically we can define the condition here, like if x is greater than y, then return x. Basically if x is the greater one, then we should return x. Or if we want to create a function which provides us only true or false, basically there are only two values where we need to evaluate whether this one is bigger or not. The condition is true or false, so should simply return the true or false value. If x is greater than y, it will return true, or if x is not greater than y, then it will return false. Now define another function smaller, again x and y, return x smaller than y. Okay, now let me show you the example. 3 is greater than 4, false. 3 is smaller than 4, true. So this way this function works. If x is smaller than y, it will return true, otherwise it will return false. So now let's define the function define find number, of which type we'll define here by passing the function and passing the list here. So basically we are going to define, we'll see later when we call the function. Okay, now let's fire. Okay, just wait, let me any L1. Okay, but this is not as per our requirement. L1 should be basically a haphazard value. So 33 came 2 times. Now okay, this is a list. We don't know which value is smaller, which value is bigger. Now we need to define a function who will take help of these two functions, any of these functions. If we want to find out which is the biggest value out of these all elements in the list, we'll use function bigger. If we want to find the smallest value in this list, we'll take help of the smaller function. So now let's define a function find number, and it takes 2 arguments. We'll use a function. You can use any name here because this name is accessible inside this function only. So whatever you are passing from outside, if you are taking help of bigger function, bigger will be passed to this function, and then bigger only will be used inside further. Now pass it a list. Now the same thing, I think I covered it in the topic previously, how to find, I guess not. So how to find the biggest number in a list? First you define what is the result of this function. So first, initially we will take element number first as a result. Further we will keep on comparing all the values with it. Now for items in L1, so we'll take each and every item and we'll compare it with that. If function, now we just pay attention, we got 2 elements now. One is result, it is holding the first element of the list. Another one is items, not take items, take item only because it is a single value. So we need to compare these both, result and item. So we'll pass it to function, it is better. If function, which one? Item and result. If function item and result, now what does this mean? We are going to pass these 2 values to any of these functions, and if their result is true, then we are going to assign it further. Then result is equal to item. Okay, come out of loop, return what is result, and get out of the loop, get out of the function. Now just pay attention what happens here. Find number, no, find number. Now out of this list I want to know which is the bigger value, biggest value. Bigger, pass the function bigger to this function and pass on the list. So I guess I'm right, 54, yes. Anyways, I have to analyze manually only, there's no use of this function. So 54 is the biggest value. Now again find number, which kind of number you want to find? Smaller or not? Yeah, smaller, and pass it list. It gives you the smallest number present in the list, correct? So now you basically, to practice, try converting this function in a very simple function which will not take help of these 2 functions. First make that function and find out the maximum biggest and smallest values in the list, you'll have to make one function only. Find maximum, create a function, use it, then create another function, find minimum, and use that function, test it. Then after that you create these kinds of two functions, call any of those functions in this main function and find the value. And another better method built in Python, I'll show you. L1.sort. Now the whole list is sorted as per their number value, smallest first and biggest last. You want to access the smallest one, smallest is here, L1. What is the last? Length of L1. And remember to place -1 here, because the length will give total number of elements, but you cannot access that numbered element because that will come somewhere here. Okay, because numbering starts from 0 to n-1. So the biggest number comes here as 54. Okay, so this is like passing functions as arguments. Now the next topic will be, let me check the list. Okay, the next topic we're going to cover is collecting and processing unmatched positional arguments. What are unmatched positional arguments actually? These are something like, I'll give an example. Define f ASDF. Come on, simple ASDF. No, pass it some value 1 2 3 4. It prints out. What if you don't provide two values out of required 4? No, Python doesn't accept it because it was expecting 4 arguments and you get 2 arguments only. So what is the solution now? Ever heard of these things? Might have seen it in C++. Here we use these things for passing unlimited number of arguments to the functions. So we define them like function star args, print args. Basically you can replace this word with anything else. Now pass it any number of values, it won't complain at all. So what is happening actually? Python takes this argument as a tuple. So if you define a tuple as 1 2 3 4 5, means unlimited count of values, unlimited count of elements you can assign here, and then you just need to pass it like this. No, sorry, we have tuple star t1. It doesn't matter how long it is. Basically Python takes care of all of it, so you don't need to be worried. Now the next thing is passing dictionary arguments, fd. Another method is star args, print args. So how do you call it? A is equal to 1, S is equal to 2, D is equal to 3. It converts it into a dictionary and prints in front of you. So basically this is the way these things are processed. Now what is the use of these things? Just only printing something which we are passing to some function doesn't solve our purpose. It's not just for the show. So I'll give you an example for this. Let's define a function which takes star tuple. So we'll call it a targs. Now suppose we want the square of all of the elements which we are passing to this function. So simply we'll return not list, also not required. Just pass it to the map function. Now pass it, create a simple lambda function over here. Lambda x to the power 2. And what will be the sequence? This one function we already defined in lambda. What will be the sequence? The sequence will be the list, or no, the tuple which we are providing, targs. Okay, so what is our tuple? Tuple is this one. Let's use tuple now. Okay, so perfectly it prints out, or it returns all of the values of the squares of this tuple. You can assign it to some other value also. Result of tuple. So what is the result of tuple? Okay, you can further use it in your program. Now another thing, passing dictionary values. Okay, so what was the function? This is fd targs. Now here's some catch. The thing is that you cannot process the dictionary elements just like this, because they are combining with a key and value pair. So either you take the key pair, so either you take the keys or you take the values. So we are interested in values, where it is this one, 1, 2 and 3. We will access them and we'll get the square values of these. So how to do it? Use a map function. Now again use a lambda x, define x, that you need the squared value of all the elements. Now what should be the sequence? The sequence should be, now if you remember, how do you access the keys or values of a dictionary? You use dictionary.keys. It will give you all of the keys, or you use d1.values. So it will give you all of the values of the keys inside a dictionary in a list format. So this you can use as a sequence. So what's our dictionary? Actually dictionary is targs. Fine, get out of this function, call it now. Let's define our dictionary first. Again, very hard time defining a dictionary. A, so it uses all of your fingers. Now why this Colaveri? Let's use this one only. So d1 is equal to this is the list. What is d1? Now let's pass this to function dictionary, this one, star d1 takes exactly 0 arguments, 3 given. What happened? Where's FD? D1. Sorry. A is equal to 1. Oh, no. It's not defined like this. Remember, these are two asterisks here for defining these kind of assignments. Oh, come on, keyboard. At last I can curse the keyboard only. What happened? It's not going to work like this. I guess we should have returned the values. None. I made a mistake here. We should return, otherwise it's not going to return anything to you. Okay, so all of the values of the dictionary are squared and given to you. Now what if you want to get these both facilities together, your tuple and your dictionary assignments both at a time? We'll define a function ftd tuple and dictionary both, star args, star, let's take as t args, tuple args, and d args, dictionary args. Now what is the issue in returning the value of both of these elements or their squares is that once you use one return and then again you use another return, it's not going to work, because I'll just show you. See, after you use a return function, your cursor prompt goes back to unindented space. That means the function going to finish here only. You cannot use it any further. So whatever return you define here, it's not going to work. Only one value will be returned. So what you can do is either you can print first value, then you can print another value. Another value means the square of first value, square of all of these elements, and in the next one square of all of these elements. Or what you can do is can define a plain dictionary, then append the result. Basically result will be a list only, but it will actually, the result will be combining of two lists, so it will give you the output as a combination of two lists and one master list. Okay, so the first one we'll take from here, this one. Okay, so we got the first value, then again append another value. We'll take from here, map of t args, so is it correct? T args, d args, dictionary args, the braces, fine. Okay, now don't forget to return this result. If you don't return it, you're not going to get anything. Now what is your t1 and d1? Correct. Now call this function tuple dictionary star of t1 star of d1. Okay, perfect. So we got a master list which contains the first list contains the result of your square of all of the tuple elements. Second list contains the square of all of your dictionaries values elements. These are dictionary values where whatever 1, 2 and 3. So squares are 1, 4 and 9. Okay, so this is how to use both kinds of unmatched positional arguments in Python. Quite enough covered today. It's about 1 hour recording, so let me check the list if something is remaining or not. Finding greatest, smallest, covered. Okay, passing functions as objects arguments covered. Now greater value covered, filter is covered, mapping functions is covered. 1 or 2 functions are remaining, like reduce, used on lists, and what else, for values inside a list, for loops inside a list, one line statements done. Then nested lambdas also done. Okay, in next video we'll cover file handling, reading, writing out of file. So that's all for now.